Διευθύντρια του τοπικού γραφείου του American Club εδώ στον Πειραιά. Είμαστε ιδιαίτερα χαρούμενοι σήμερα που σας καλωσορίζουμε επιτέλους διαζώσεις στο ετήσιο Market Presentation του American Club εδώ στον Πειραιά. Παρόλο που δεν επιτρέψαμε στην πανδημία να επηρεάσει το θεσμό αυτό και αδιάλειπτα οργανώσαμε την παρουσίασή μας τα τελευταία 2 χρόνια, τίποτα δεν μπορεί να συγκριθεί με τη φυσική σας παρουσία εδώ σήμερα. So it is my privilege and great pleasure to welcome you here today on behalf of the American Club family to our annual market presentation in Piraeus. It is wonderful to see you all again here today to this landmark venue for the local shipping community. We trust that you will enjoy the presentations, but before we start off, we're delighted to have here with us today Joe and Vince, who would like to say some words before we start with our presentations. So I would like to invite to the podium our chairman, Mr. Joe Hughes. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. It's absolutely marvellous to be back here at the Marine Club. I think this is the first presentation we've had here in 3 years. In fact, you know, due to the exigencies of COVID over the last several years. And I think you'll be very impressed by what you'll be hearing today. We have, as you will no doubt have gathered from announcements made earlier in the year, something of a new senior team coming through as Vince and I don't step out but step back a bit from the day-to-day. We're still around. And we intend to continue to lend support to the new younger management team coming through to add greater strength and vigour for the future of the American Club and Eagle Ocean Marine. Just by way of some personal reflections now, I fell in love with Greece when I was a teenager in the late 1960s, and I had the great privilege of studying ancient Greek and ancient Greek history. And that love affair really started there, and I've always been terribly interested in that dimension of the Greek tradition, the classical tradition, ever since. I first came here in the mid-1970s as a tourist rather than on business, and was delighted to find that the ancient Greek studies that I'd had earlier in my schooling meant that I could actually read things, or at least try to pronounce them in ancient Greek terms, on buildings like, you know, ethnike trapeza tes halados, as we were told to pronounce it in those days when I was at school, which must mean National Bank of Greece, or to see exodos and ace-odos on the freeways and on the roads. I mean, the notion that a great biblical work like Exodus should also be, this is the ramp off the freeway, actually did strike me as a little odd at the time, but so be it. I'm bound to tell you, though, that my Greek training, you know, for example, extracts from Euripides or, you know, hoi lakidai monioi, esan ente agora, alakai hoi athanaioi, esan ente boule, which I was taught to understand means that the Lacedaemonians were in the marketplace, but the Athenians were in the Parliament House. That doesn't get you very far, I soon discovered, with the average taxi driver here in Greece. But I never actually got round to study modern Greek. Subsequent to that, my first Posidonia here was in 1990. And I think that I've probably been to every Posidonia ever since, which has been an immense pleasure. And what an event each Posidonia is. And everyone, really a great testament to the position of Greek shipping in the world, and a wonderful occasion to celebrate Greek success in this very important dimension of world economic activity. As the American Club, we've had a connection with Greece for some years, of course. When I joined in 1995, there were nascent connections at that stage that gained further impetus over the years from about the early 2000s onwards. And of course, in 2005, we opened our office here, and I've just been to the office on my way here. I come back fairly frequently, as many of you know, and I'm bound to tell you that the energy and the enthusiasm, the desire to serve, and the huge feeling of commitment to the club and EOM and to our membership here is quite outstanding. I mean, I've really been, I'm part of the organization, obviously, but it really impressed me to see such enthusiasm, such a great group of people flying the flag for the American Club in this part of the world. And many of you, of course, will come to have known them well over the years, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, and it will be evidently clear later on in this presentation, the enthusiasm we have and how very, very vigorous and energized they are in advancing the interests of the club and EOM in Greece and beyond. So I have every confidence in the future, and I know that as a result of what we'll tell you today, that you will share that view at the end of these presentations. I will leave that obviously to my colleagues to do, but there has been something of a tradition, usually at the end, but I'll do it now, of my telling one of the experiences that I've had in my life. Many years, nearly 46 years of the practice of marine insurance, mainly P&I over that time, in various parts of the globe. So I would like to share with you a true story that I remember from the very early days, actually, of our involvement in Greece. I was in London on my way, I think, to a presentation here, the first of which we had in 2006, actually, I recall, just after we opened the office. And I was on my way here in that year, I think it was, and I was visiting an old legal friend of mine in New Square in Lincoln's Inn. And some of you who are lawyers here may be aware of the fact that there's a bookseller, legal bookseller there called Wildey & Sons. And I popped in there, you know, for old time's sake, and to see whether they had some nice framed pictures that might look nice in the office back in New York. And as I was on the second floor there, I came across the most extraordinary sight. It was 3 large parrots sitting on ornamental perches at one side of, you know, by the bookshelves there. The one on the left was writing furiously into what used to be called evidence books. They were sort of legal-sized paper in blue books, very diligently. The one in the middle had the latest supplement of Halsbury's Laws of England and was reading it very, very diligently, seeming to want to recollect it all. And the one on the right was just sitting there smoking a little cheroot and talking into a mini telephone. Not apparently doing anything intellectual, you might think, at all. Anyway, I was just dumbfounded by this sight, and a sales assistant came along a couple of minutes later, and I said, "My goodness, what are these?" He said, "These are what we call juridical parrots, Psittacus juridicus extraordinarius being their Latin name." And I said, "How pedantic of you, I knew that." But anyway, he said, I said, "Well, what do they do?" He said, "Well, the one on the left there has total recall. If you are a barrister going into the court, you just put him on your shoulder, which may look a bit odd, but you put him on your shoulder, and he'll just remember everything that was said. So you don't have to take notes. At the end of the day, he'll repeat everything, you know, like a dictaphone. Fantastic. Excellent. What about the one in the middle? Oh, well, the one in the middle has a memory for everything. He'll memorize everything. And he's reading Halsbury's Laws of England latest supplement. And if you want to consult him on anything, something like the measure of damages for failure to complete a contract for the sale of land, or, remoteness of damage in tort or anything of that kind, he'll know instantly, give you all the case law, all the references, just boom, like that. So you don't actually have to have Halsbury's Laws of England in your library. And I said, what about the one on the end there? It doesn't appear to be doing much. We said, well, he doesn't really. I mean, he comes in usually about 11 to 11:30 every day, makes a few phone calls, talking to some of his friends, goes to lunch about 12:15, comes back, if he comes back at all, actually, about 3:30, 4 o'clock, and he does that 3 days a week. We don't see him on Mondays and Fridays. I said, how extraordinary. All right, well, are these for sale? And he said, yes, they are. Well, how much are they? He said, well, the one on the left, the evidence one, £5,000. The one in the middle, the Halsbury's Laws of England, one, that's £5,000 too. And I said, what about the one on the right? Doesn't seem to do much. He said, that's £100,000. I said, £100,000, and that's crazy. I mean, that's ridiculous. Why is that? He said, you see, it's because the other two called him the senior partner. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and enjoy the serious bit of the presentation now. Thank you.
You wouldn't believe, but there are a lot of similarities between me and Joe. Eloquent sophistication may not be one of them. But I have a parrot joke too, but I won't repeat that joke right now. That'll be for another day. Joe and I met in the summer of 1995. We really didn't communicate that well back then. And it seemed like every time I spoke with Joe, there were words missing and garbled in between. It didn't occur to me until 2 weeks later that Joe was using words that I never heard before. So I started going into our meetings with a dictionary, a physical dictionary, because back then the internet wasn't what it is today. So you had to look at a real book. And then I was able to download an app and converted Oxford English to New York English. But one thing that Joe and I always had in common and always had our eye on was a vision. And that vision has manifested itself into what the American Club is today. That did not happen without the support of the membership and the extreme fortune to have a board of directors that shared the same vision and promoted that vision. And with that assistance, we were able to build what we have today, a magnificent team. And part of that was building a succession plan, and that succession plan is now taking front stage with a fantastic C-suite, supported by a global group of professionals that we love and we call family, because it truly is a family. And at the center stage is an individual who is internationally renowned, a 4-time award winner, first woman to head a P&I club in the history of the International Group P&I clubs, Lloyd's List Personality of the Year, the one, the only, Dorothea Ioannou.
Okay, I had no idea that he was going to do that. Now you made me run from the beginning. Anyway. Good afternoon, everybody. We are so thrilled to finally be back here in person with everybody, as was mentioned, for the first time since 2019. As many of you know, there have been some changes in the corporate makeup. Dan and I recently took on the positions of COO and CEO from Vince and Joe, who remain as president and chairman, and whom we rely on as one of the greatest resources in P&I probably that has ever existed. Dan will be speaking a lot more to that later in terms of our people and our service and our ethos. And then the other change that happened this year is the club's subsidiary, American Hellenic, has expanded into P&I to provide what we consider and what is considered a broad European marine insurance base. It's now referred to as the American Club Europe to encompass it all, or the acronym ASAMIC, and it is fully consolidated now into the club's business profile and the financials, and is approved as a linked member of the international group. So I have a whole bunch of slides here today, but before I delve into those slides, I want to touch on some things that I know are on the minds of all of you. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about 2022. And we're very happy with 2022. We're coming off a very successful renewal this past February. And in fact, the club has continued to grow since February and to this date during the policy year. And we've enjoyed some steady growth of tonnage over the last 5 years with a slightly shifting risk profile. You're going to see in the stats that I show you later today that the claims progression is actually not that much different in terms of the retained claims level as compared to, let's say, 2019, 2020, and 21. The difference for 2022 is there has been an extraordinarily significant decrease in pool claims, and we are no longer seeing the COVID-related claims. Thankfully, not just for us, but for the world at large. But the main thing that made the difference is that there has been a steady adjustment of premiums, which is now better aligned with what we consider the new world of claims costs. And I'm going to be showing you slides related to that because we are, ladies and gentlemen, is that still okay to say, ladies and gentlemen, nowadays? Okay. We are in a new world, a new claims environment. So I'm going to speak about a changing risk landscape, which has developed actually over the last decade. The last 10 years, in fact, has seen a steady yet significantly rising impact, especially on people claims, across the board. It's a phenomenon that we refer to as social inflation, and we've seen it take its toll on all of the crew and the passenger and people claims in generally, including Steve Dewar, all sorts of accidents related to people. With an especially high impact, I guess, in the U.S., but we've seen it across the board in all countries where we deal with claims. In the U.S., we have tracked this phenomenon, and in order so you can understand, we have inflation, and then we have what's called social inflation. And social inflation is that amount that tracks higher than the regular inflation. In the U.S., we've tracked it on American Club experience at about 140% over the last decade, and 50% across the world at large. These are significant differences in terms of the claims landscape that we are all used to. And this has been added to and compounds the problems that we've been encountering over the last, I would say, 8 years or so, I'm going to go through the full list of this. So we're dealing with a major crew competency crisis and a seafarer supply crisis. We're dealing with general economic inflation that was never accounted for before. We're dealing with an increased cost and volatility related to commodities, which has affected the cargo claims across the board, and I will give you those statistics later as well. We're dealing with a new world of reinsurance that doesn't have the same appetite that it used to. So we have narrowing parameters on reinsurance, and we're seeing that across the board. We have a rising cost of compliance. We have conflicting sanctions regimes, and now this year, as everybody knows, and I'm sure everybody's looking at their own spreadsheets, major investment volatility. So this steadily changing landscape was then compounded by the greatest disruption that we've seen in recent history, which was the pandemic, the impact of which was only manifested in 2021 in terms of claims. And I also want to mention something in terms of who we are and how we got where we are and how we deal with certain changes in the landscape of claims, and I'm going to refer to sanctions. So I know many of you were very upset this past summer when the EU put out those questions related to the impact of insurance coverage for Russian cargoes, certain types of Russian cargoes. But you don't have to go very far past in history to remember that the American Club was usually the one that was on the the disadvantaged side of sanctions, with the U.S. normally being the lead in that respect. When we think about Venezuela and Cuba and Iran and Syria. But what did the American Club do back then? I'll tell you what the American Club did back then. The American Club released many of its members that were otherwise conducting lawful trade. And that is who we are, but it does have an impact. So it's no secret that we're coming off one of the most difficult years in P&I, both from a retained claims perspective as well as a pool claims performance perspective. And while the American Club has had no pool claims in 2021, we haven't had one since 2016, our contribution to other pool claims is projected for that year alone to reach 18 million. And given the early indication of this type of performance, at the November meeting, the board, taking their fiduciary duty very seriously, decided to levy a 30% supplementary call to deal with that rising deficit of 2021 and increase the release call so that we can see how that year is going to develop. Now, we do believe, and I will show you, that the 2021 year is overall an anomaly. Although it follows a general trend, there were certain factors that made it extraordinarily different. 60% of the deficit for 2021 is attributable to reinsurance non-covered COVID claims, covered pre-pandemic, and contribution to other people's claims. But 2022, there are almost no COVID claims. It's nominal, not even worth speaking about. And there were no pool claims for the first half of the year, as compared to 25 declared for 2021 and 30 declared for 2020. But like I said before, 2022, from a claims perspective, on the retained level, is not performing much different from recent past years. The difference is the premium level that we've achieved. We, like all clubs from 2010 to 2015, went through a relatively benign claims environment. And during that period, you will all recall, the market itself was going through a recessionary period. It was having difficulty. There was a freight market crisis. And as a result, premium rating, on average, declined by about 25%. And I'm going to show you these graphs. This continued, actually, to about 2019, where it started to level off, because it was during 18-19 when we started to see the impact of the rising claims from the previous 2 years. And so that's when we started to see the change being realized. The claims trend continued to 2021, and we do not believe that this is a trend, but as I described earlier, we believe it's a new risk landscape. And why do I say it's a new risk landscape? Because we're in a different world than we were 10 years ago. And I think we all see it even in our own lives every single day. However, we've made significant strides at this last renewal. From inception of 2021 to inception of 2022, the club's average rate per ton actually grew by about 15%. And 2022 is indeed performing better. Like I said, not because of a change, but because we've matched the rating to the risk. The next renewal will implement the next stage of the adjustment strategy. However, it will concentrate more on performance-based metrics for individual accounts, and including deselection, which was also a part of the recent past. And so based on what we're seeing with these steps, combined with the performance that we're seeing leveling off, we do believe that we're going to be in a much better position in 12 months from now. So, having given you the landscape of what we see, let's begin with some of the statistics. These are our normal pie charts. You might see some changes a little bit from past years. So let's begin with the management domicile. You will see that almost 50% of the club's tonnage comes from Europe, Middle East, and Africa. That's naturally reflective of the number one position that this market holds in the shipping industry. The other two areas are divided between Asia and the Americas. The Americas a little bit less than Asia, again reflective of that ship owning industry and also reflective of selective risk underwriting. On the vessel type, we're pretty much even between bulk carriers and tankers, Whereas traditionally in the past, we were more heavily weighted towards bulkers. You will see now that the tankers are taking a slight edge, with the lesser concentration on the higher risk general container, passenger, and ro-ro vessels at 50%. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier. I want you to understand this graph now shows the average rate per ton percentage fluctuation from 2009 until 2022. It shows both the club and the average rate of all the clubs together as initially declared to the pool. You will see that tracking it in the first section between 2009 and 2012, it was almost 20%, reaching about 23% in 2015, continuing to drop in 2017 to almost 40, and then in 19 plateauing at about 45% and a little bit more. And then you will see, so that is when the actual impact of the claims began to be felt, not only by the American club, but by all the clubs, okay? And you'll see then it starts to plateau, and it's now on the rising end of this fluctuation. This shows a cycle. What is the cycle? The cycle is that rates follow claims, not the other way around. There is no other way to do it in a mutual. That period followed a period of a benign claims environment. P&I has a long tail. You do not feel it in the very beginning. It hits you later. But not only that, it's a marine mutual. It's a ship owner's mutual. So the club is going to stand by its membership and help them during the difficult times as well. And sometimes that gets reflected in rating. But when the time comes where the claims shift, so do the rates. And that is what we are seeing now. And so this is the way a mutual is supposed to work. This is the way the American club dealt with the difficulties of this period. And now we see, obviously, that we are leveling off at the very end. 2021, the period of 2019 to 21 and to date also experienced sharp increases. Oh, sorry, I'm on the next one. Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention before I go on to the next slide, actually, is during that period, 2009 to 2016, in terms of, and to 2015, in terms of policy years, the club did not levy any unbudgeted supplementary calls. And the supplementary call for 2016 was not levied until 2019. We went 10 years without asking for additional funds from the membership. We need to keep that in mind when we reflect on the recent history of the American club over the last few years. I bet you many of you didn't realize that this happened during this period. And I say that because I've been to a lot of meetings this past couple of weeks, and many of the brokers that I spoke to, some of the commentary was, you can't just throw a GI on top of a GI on top of a GI and expect everybody to just keep compounding, paying more premium. No, we can't, and we didn't. Development of claims and reinsurance cost. This tells a pretty interesting picture as well. Like I said, 2021, extraordinarily higher than the rest of the years. 2022, for your guidance, also includes projections. It's not just the incurred claims. So that includes IBNR also related to pool claims that have not been incurred, and IBNR also related to retained claims that have not been incurred, because it's just too early. So, remembering now the rates from before, this trajectory obviously started to put a stress on the rates that we were, that the membership was enjoying, and the shipping industry at large was enjoying, because the average rate for the IG was pretty much similar in terms of the fluctuation of percentages. So, like I said, a lot of these factors, and especially COVID, were not felt until 2021, when global trade started to move again. But within a restrictive reinsurance platform, greater competency issues, as well as pandemic mental health crisis and a reducing manning pool, COVID and crew issues cannot be ignored also as a factor in terms of the rising frequency of pool claims. And this is also simultaneous with a period of great and significant technological advancement in shipping, complicated by a challenging training environment. And I know I've said this in other presentations that I've done. We've got the energy transition, we have technological advancement, we have more modern ships. Believe me, that's going to bring new types of claims, because the greatest cause for claims is human error. So 2021, we also saw a sharp increase in cargo claims. In 2021, there were 2 cargo claims that encroached upon the club's P&I abatement layer of $4.5 million. But even discounting those 2 claims, the average cost of a cargo claim in 2021 was more than twice as expensive in 2020. And then the cost in 2020 was about 50% more of the cost of 2019 for your average cargo claim. And that is a big bulk of what the clubs deal with. And then COVID, after moderate directly related claims in 2020, exploded in 2021 with an increase in both frequency and average claim cost. In total, the cost of claims in 2020, for which there was reinsurance available for the market, was 3 times as large in 2021. And COVID incidents are examples of the types of claims that, while commercial insurers and reinsurers maybe have the luxury to retreat from, clubs do not. So roughly 60% of the deficiency is comprised of other clubs' pool claims at historically high levels, and direct COVID claims experienced by club members, the impact of which was made worse by an increasing trend in claims costs overall. So like I said, the difference is not one of a claims trend. The difference at the attritional level, the difference is the premium rating. The average rate per ton is higher by 15% overall as compared to 21-21, and if you think about the average combined loss ratio across the board in the IG, this type of increase can make all the difference in terms of absorbing the changing claims risk environment. This is the development of pool claims. And I wish I had actually, next time I will put up the data from before that. But this tells the picture what I was trying to say in terms of the cycle begins with the pool claims and then it hits the attritional level. But here we have the average contribution to pool claims for the 14, 15, 16 is hugely different from 17 until 21. And this graph tells us it tracks the fluctuation of the claims count at the pool level with the claims cost. So you'll see both were rising, but the average cost of the pool claim exceeded even the frequency. And you see it started in 2017. Investment performance. I think the red obviously stands out. What I want to talk a little bit about here, though, is that the investment performance of the investment strategy of the American Club is one that's worked very well for them. This past year, obviously, 2022 was a bad year. It's a bad year for everybody. Right at this point in time, I think this is updated to a couple of weeks ago, we are down by 9% for the year. But overall, on average, over this period, we were on average a little bit north of 5%, give or take, overall these years. And I will remind everybody that in 2008, and it's not here, how far can I put onto a slide? In 2008, we were down by 8% during that crisis, and 2009, we were up by 12%. The strategy is a responsible one. It's unrealized losses at this stage, and just like in the past, we've been there before, and we're here again, and we believe that the investment strategy has proven itself and will continue to prove itself, and we expect that to slightly turn. It's actually ticking up right now as compared to the previous months in the middle of the year. Social inflation. So I know that a lot of you are going to be interested in this, and I think I've spoken about a lot of the other claims trends, and this just kind of compounds the whole thing in terms of what we're seeing in our own retention claims. And before I go into social inflation, this is very much connected also to what I was talking about before about a trend of a crew competency crisis, given that P&I, the major cause of claims, is human error. I don't know if anybody of you seen the Seafarer Workforce Report of 2021 issued by BIMCO and the ICS. They have warned that we will need almost 90,000 officers by 2026 to operate the world fleet. And there is an especially great shortage of officers with technical experience. I mean, I don't know. I think that's probably going to affect claims. So moving on to social inflation. Social inflation is defined as the phenomenon of the rising cost of insurance claims over and above economic inflation. And it's particularly evident with personal injury claims. It's having a direct impact on liability insurance results, and it's a multifaceted issue because it brings in a lot of the roots related to public's changing views and opinions about various issues, including deep pockets of insurance companies. Kind of like what we call the blame culture, and I think we've all seen that in litigation. So let's look at some of the statistics. In 2020, the personal injury filings in the U.S. surged by 97%. The good thing, of course, is that most of those do settle. About 96% of the cases are settling. This phenomenon has originated in the U.S., but now it's spread across the whole world. We're seeing it also on the fixed side in terms of people claims in Asia. And like I said, overall, we're seeing a 50% increase impact. There's also a phenomenon now that's developed that's called nuclear verdicts. I don't know if any of you are familiar. That means verdicts that are greater than 10 million. And then there's thermonuclear verdicts that are greater than 100 million. We have not seen those, thankfully. I spoke about the rising cost that the club has experienced, and as well for the rest of the world at about 51%. It's basic trial tactics, but not only. There's a big difference also in terms of the U.S. compared to the rest of the world, which is judge versus jury determinations. But like I said, this is something that we're seeing across the board. Life is more expensive, so liability for life is simply more expensive. So having said that, this is one part of the claims trend that we're seeing. And having completed that, I will call up Tom Hamilton to talk about EOM. Thank
you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really nice to be here and to see so many familiar faces and friends in one place gathered together in advance of the Christmas holidays. So thank you very much for coming out. I'm really pleased to be here to talk a little bit about Eagle Ocean Marine. And as background, Eagle Ocean Marine was an idea that came up for the American Club as an opportunity in 2011 to provide club-style service to vessel operators who don't necessarily need the very high limits of liability that the International Group offers as a standard mutual entry. And there are several reasons why they might not require it, some of which includes their regional type of trading or the relatively small tonnage size of their vessels. Eagle Ocean Marine offers a solution for this, and we were one of the first clubs in the International Group to do that. We provide a limit of liability of up to $500 million, as I say, for vessel operators who tend to operate vessels which are on the smaller end of the tonnage scale. Geographically, our profile by tonnage is significantly larger in Asia, particularly when you compare the mutual book of business, the geographic breakdown. But in recent years, we've seen an encouraging trend where Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and in particular the local community here in Greece, has seen increased tonnage distribution. The rest of the world includes primarily Latin America because Eagle Ocean Marine, as a policy, does not underwrite or insure risks which are in the U.S. In terms of vessel type, you'll see that dry cargo and tugs, barges. I hear the horns in the background, which is really nice. Makes me feel like I'm back at sea. That is very nice. So tugs, barges, other offshore vessels, and dry cargo vessels comprise the majority of the tonnage profile. And it makes sense that tankers may look like a smaller proportion compared to the mutual entry. And the primary reason for that is that those vessels tend to need that $1 billion worth of oil pollution cover that the mutual entry provides. The average size by way of gross tonnage in Eagle Ocean Marine is only 2,500 tons, which is significantly smaller, as you can imagine, than the mutual entry. Eagle Ocean Marine was also a way for the American Club to gently diversify its activities within the P&I space. So it very much represents a subset of mutual P&I. And even looking back to 2011, we anticipated that there would be an inevitable flight to quality for those vessel operators who really desired quality service, particularly on the claims handling side, in addition to having the highest quality security. For us, underwriting the business with Eagle Ocean Marine, we've always had a focus on underlying performance and financial strength. And what we can see from this chart is the development of the combined ratios over the years. And encouragingly, despite a wave that's being ridden, we have, for all those combined years, 85%, which is clearly evidencing delivery of benefit to the mutual membership. Talked about the loss ratios, and another way to look at the performance of the Eagle Ocean Marine program is to look more closely at the way that claims and premiums have progressed over the years. And although we started at relatively low levels of both written premium, and tonnage as a consequence, we have seen clearly that the business is being underwritten sensibly, responsibly, because the red bars, being claims, have been under by a margin, a significant margin, of the premium level in blue. It's important that we do underwrite this business selectively. We have very clear criteria about what type of risks are acceptable and that which we won't write, we won't take on. At the end of the day, the primary focus is to provide that quality service at an appropriate cost to vessel operators who, as I say, don't necessarily need those very high limits of liability, and paramountly to deliver benefit to the mutual membership of the club. So it's I look out the room and I can think that there's some EOM insureds here, and I'd like to say thank you very much for your support, as well as to the mutual members and brokers and other service providers that have supported us over the years, both the mutual and more recently for the Eagle Ocean Marine program. I'll now turn it over to Dan, who will speak. Thank you.
Καλησπέρα. Μαζί με τη Δωροθέα, τον Tom, τον Joe και τον Vince, με χαρά σας καλωσορίζω σήμερα στο φετινό Market Presentation του American P&I Club και της EOM. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome today. It's fantastic looking around and seeing so many familiar faces, and faces that I don't know yet, but I'm certainly looking forward to getting to know. You heard just now from Dorothea and Tom that we had difficult 2 years, the last 2 years. But a lot of that was due to factors beyond our control. And I emphasize that, beyond our control. Because there is one aspect of our business that is well within our control. And it's something that I believe we do best. And it's our people and the service that we provide. And I say that, and Dorothea touched on this, and even Joe did, we are a true mutual in every sense, financially and otherwise, especially with service. We believe in helping everyone within the club always with the best interest of the club at heart. And that started with a great leadership that Joe and Vince have passed on to us. And it goes by our ethos. Okay? And what is that? It's a characteristic of our culture at the American Club. And that culture is across the world. From our headquarters in New York, to Piraeus, to Houston, to Shanghai, to Hong Kong, to Limassol. It's global reach with a local touch, and you'll understand why shortly that is so true. How do we develop our culture? It's manifested through two things: our attitude and our aspirations. You might laugh, because this might be a cliche for many of you, but we truly believe we are a family. Not just within the managers and our partners and our correspondents, but more importantly with our members, 8 of whom are Greek-based members. And we're very proud of that. On the board, yes, of course. Yes, thank you. We have a lot more than that, but on the board. So let's talk a little bit about our attitude. What is our attitude? Well, we want to find solutions. We want to think outside of the box. And more importantly, we tell everyone we have the courage to try something new, always having our members and the club's interest at heart. Our aspirations, well, we want to be proactive. We want to be problem solvers. And giving the same attention to a claim, whether it's large or small, whether a member has 50 ships or 1 or 2 ships. Because that is at the heart of mutuality. As far as I'm concerned, and many of you know me, I spent 25 years as a P&I club correspondent in New Orleans, Louisiana, working for every club. And I can tell you with absolute confidence that I'm proud to be part of the service and the people that we have in the American P&I Club. I think we're second to none as far as I'm concerned. And why, you ask? Well, I'll tell you why. It starts with the training. From claims to underwriting to loss prevention, compliance, we focus on our people being responsive, polite, helpful, and innovative. And that's key when they handle their issues. Now, another element of service that is well within our control and that I feel also makes us stand out is that there's unfettered access to our senior managers for quicker decision making. And there's more hands-on involvement at all levels, among all departments and all offices. Our ability to adapt to emerging trends and geopolitical events in short notice also distinguishes us. And I'm just going to use something that Dorothea touched on, compliance and sanctions. We've had to deal with that for many, many years before the other clubs had to deal with it. And we hit the ground running when it came to all these new sanctions and our compliance teams across our offices. Now, the service is attributable to our people. We practice strategic hiring. What does that mean? We seek out persons with diverse experience. We bring lawyers in. We bring people who have worked for major shipping operators. We bring surveyors in with technical background. We look for people who have skills and contacts that will further our goals. And all of that consistent with ESG principles. At the end of the day, we want persons to join us who feel like we do about being part of a family and what that means. And I'm going to start with our headquarters in America. As Dorothea mentioned, we've had some changes at the senior level. But we're also supported by extremely competent global leadership teams, including Joanna, who you heard from, Molly McCafferty, Bill Moore, and Manny Barry. We've hired 2 new claims executives in New York, one a lawyer, one coming from a major shipping operator in New York with tremendous experience. We've hired in underwriting, we've hired in loss prevention. Everyone has hit the ground running. The same in our London office, led by Richard Lineker, who has taken over the mantle of managing director from Simon Collins. The hiring of Martin Cook in the back there, well-known figure in this market. We've hired another claims account executive, as well as 2 market liaison assistants. And of course, here in Greece, with our partner HMA assisting us in the handling of American Club Europe. We're bolstered by the depth of their experience throughout all levels, underwriting, accounts, and financing. The same with Asia. We brought in a new executive there, and we're expecting another claims assistant to join us in the fall of 2023. And leaving the best for last, and I'm going to call Joanna up here, who has that honor. Let's talk a little bit about our Piraeus office.
Thank you, Dan. Who would have imagined back in 2005 when the Piraeus office was established that from an office of 4 would have almost quintupled in size within 17 years, numbering today 19 members of staff. We are especially proud that our new CEO, Dorothea Ioannou, started and developed her path in the American Club from this office, something which gives us great inspiration. With the American Club's EMEA-based membership, from a ship management perspective, invariably exceeding 50% globally, the Piraeus office is strategically located for claims handling. We number today a claims team of 10, which is actually the largest amongst all our offices globally. The American Club has duly appreciated and embraced the Piraeus office's strategic position and instrumental role. The fact that the club's co-global claims director is based in this office is testament to this, ensuring seamless global claims management between the US and the EMEA region, Southeast Asia, and the Far East, irrespective of time zone. And I am thankful for the club's faith in me in fulfilling this role. Our claims team comprises 143 years of combined experience of lawyers qualified in Greece, England and Wales, New York, from private practice, in-house, cargo recovery, other IG clubs, as well as ship operations and broking professionals. We pride ourselves for the boutique service that we offer our members. We offer the same service irrespective of fleet size or profile. Every member is equally important to us, and our job is to protect our membership, to the fullest whilst minimizing exposure. What enables us to deliver this service is our trust and investment in local talent, our tailor-made training and mentoring procedures, which promote organic growth and holistic progression, our team spirit, our strong work ethic, and our collegiality. Thanks to these principles, we enjoy a high retention rate of our staff, and even the few who may have left, more often than not, usually wish to return to us. So whilst we recently added 3 new claims executives to our claims team, and this is indeed an ideal opportunity for them to get to meet as many as possible of you in person, our office now has the privilege of offering a much more holistic service. Again, the American Club's appreciation of the rich local talent pool has led to the establishment of a claims liaison and business development team, an accounting team, and a compliance team, which are conduits towards a swift and effective service when time is of the essence, irrespective of time zone. So although the Piraeus office has traditionally been dedicated to claims, we now enjoy a much more diverse environment, which enables us to, gives us the opportunity to provide a multifaceted service. So I'm very proud of our team. I can just go on, but I don't want to keep you much longer. I'm sure you look forward to mingling over some food and drinks. So thank you very much, and I pass you on again to Dan.
So, in closing, for my part, our ethos, our culture, the quality of our staff across all departments and all offices, their enthusiasm and commitment dovetail with Dorothea and I and Tom and Arpad, our excitement for the future of the American P&I Club. So from our family to you, thank you very much for all your support and your faith in us. So thank you, Dorothea.
Thank you. Just a little bit more. So, where are we? 2021, as I described before, was an extraordinarily difficult and anomalous year. The rising claims experience, like I said, is part of the cycle. It precedes the rate adjustment. That's what we saw happening over the last few years. We have a new risk, a new reinsurance platform that we must adapt to, and we are. But we see that the premium leveling now is commensurate to the risk in the reinsurance environment. Investment outlook, of course, remains uncertain, but the strategy that has been followed by the American Club has proven to serve it well, and we will continue to be less reliant on investment returns when managing the budgeting from an underwriting perspective. As Tom mentioned, the fixed premium side bodes very well for the American Club. It continues to leave profits and to serve the best interests of the club, despite the fact that it follows generally the same claims trend from a retained perspective. The other thing you might have seen, I'm not sure if it announced yesterday or it might be today, that we are issuing our inaugural sustainability report, where we will be disclosing indices related to our performance from an SDG perspective within the United Nations structure. of sustainability, I'm sure none of you will be surprised to find that we performed really well on gender diversity. 2022 and the way ahead. I think that what we heard today and what you've all experienced is what's called an American Club can-do attitude. This approach is stronger than ever as we grow. We've seen 2022 enjoy drastically reduced level of pool claims, and our analysis of the trends that we've been talking to you about today gives us great insight on the claims development, but also the risk appetite that we need to create a better future, and which has brought us to a 2022 that is leveling off. The premium is matching the new claims environment, and we do believe we're at a turning point. And so we have much confidence for 2022 and for the future. Πριν κλείσω θα πω λίγα λόγια στα ελληνικά, γιατί όπως μου έχετε πει πολύ συχνά, στην Ελλάδα είμαστε. Ξέρω έχουμε περάσει δύσκολα, αλλά έχουμε περάσει και καλά. Έχετε σταθεί και έχουμε σταθεί. Και αυτό θα γίνει μόνο πιο δυνατό. Εγώ δεσμεύομαι σε αυτό. Λένε πολλά τώρα τελευταία για το θέμα της πρώτης γυναίκας στο P&I. Για μένα αυτό δεν είναι σημαντικό. Αυτό τυχαίνει να είμαι γυναίκα. Αυτό που έχει σημασία για μένα, το σημαντικό σημείο ή το στοιχείο σε αυτή την ανάθεση, είναι το ελληνικό-κυπριακό στοιχείο. Εμείς το κάναμε εδώ, από τον Πειραιά το κάναμε αυτό, από την Ελλάδα. Μαζί το κάναμε σε αυτόν τον τόπο. Εδώ μεγαλώσαμε, εδώ αγαπήσαμε την ναυτιλία. Και ξέρω ότι το νιώθετε, είμαι σίγουρη το νιώθετε. Η μισή καρδιά του American Club είναι ελληνική. Και δεν το λέω από το θέμα της στατιστικής. Το είδατε στο pie chart. Δεν έχει σημασία αυτό. Είναι κομμάτι της ψυχής. Το 22 ξεκινάμε καινούριο κεφάλαιο. Η ηγεσία του κλαμπ είναι από εδώ. Είναι σημαντικό αυτό. Εδώ ήμασταν, εδώ είμαστε και εδώ θα παραμείνουμε. Και σας ευχαριστούμε. Λοιπόν, thank you. Πραγματικά είναι χαρά μου σήμερα, πραγματικά. Και εκτιμώ και πολύ, έχουμε όλοι εισπράξει πάρα πολύ αγάπη από αυτή την αγορά και το εκτιμάμε ιδιαίτερα. Τώρα θα σας κεράσουμε κάτω, να τα πούμε πιο χαλαρά. Ευχαριστώ.